Welcome to the Alcohol-Free Lifestyle Podcast, where you learn to live a life of health, wealth, love, and happiness. Amazing things can happen when you go alcohol-free. My name is James Swanwick. Welcome to the show. Today we're talking to a gentleman by the name of Justin McClure, who's based in Atlanta, Georgia, who is a very successful businessman and has been 11 years alcohol-free now. And just before we hit record here, we were talking a little bit about his journey from comedian and sort of hustler, go, to becoming alcohol-free 11 years now, and then going on to create amazing business ventures, in part with a gentleman that you might know of called Damon John, who's one of the Shark Tank personalities. Shark Tank, of course, is the very famous television series that celebrates all things entrepreneurship. And our guest today, Justin McClure, is also the author of a book called Daily Sober. So, Justin, great to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think you kind of summed it up there. A lot of that can be summed up with that if you get your life together and you're patient, better things will happen in sobriety. And I think a lot of my story is that I just was patient, meaning that when I got sober, I knew great things wouldn't happen the next day. But if I just stayed the course, I might be surprised at some of the things that happened. And through that, you meet people like Damon John and other people, and you build businesses. But it all happened from one day when I decided, I think the problem in my life is me, and I need to address that. And until I do that, my life is going to continue to be a downward spiral, which it was. I was a comedian for years, but now as a sober person, there's something deep to this to say that I was able to stop stand-up comedy in a second after I got sober and I got healthy, because I realized I didn't love stand-up comedy. I loved that people laughed at me. I needed to feel accepted. I needed to feel like I was worthy, like I was good looking, I was funny, I was charismatic. Once people decided I was those things, I felt better about myself. The sober journey, obviously we can talk about, taught me that once I got healthy with myself and I learned to love myself, I realized I didn't need people telling me that I was anything.
Yeah, I get that. It's funny because when I'm from Australia, and my native country is Australia, and when I moved over to California in the early 2000s, they really expected me to be the larrikin Australian Crocodile Dundee character who was a big
Mm-hmm.
drinking, kind of fun-loving larrikin. And so I played into that role, and they loved it. They lapped it up. The Americans absolutely celebrated me for it. So, I played rugby for Los Angeles Rugby Club, and at the end of a match or a game on a Saturday, would go back to this very famous bar in Manhattan Beach called Sharky's. Manhattan Beach is a little bit south of Los Angeles
I've
Airport.
been there. I lived in California. I've been there. I lived in
Yeah.
Santa Monica, so I've been there. I know Sharkies. I got drunk there before.
If I was lucky enough or unlucky in hindsight to win the Man of the Match award, I would have to chug beer out of a rugby boot while everyone was
Yeah.
around me going, chug, chug, chug. And, I got introduced as the Aussie guy. Oh, he's a big drinker. He's a great guy. And so I just played into that personality. And it was only years later, after I'd stopped drinking alcohol, that I realized that I was really getting a lot of my self-worth or validation from playing that character. And it sounds like what you're sharing is you got a lot of
Yeah.
that as well from your career as a comedian.
Yeah. And let me just tell you about the day that I got sober. The day I'm 11 years sober. I remember the day I got sober. I was womanizing in New York City. I was dating everybody because I felt so bad about myself. I need a woman to make me feel good. So there was one day that I said, you know what? I've been chasing this woman forever. If I can just go out with her, will I be happy? If she'll just give me the time, will I be happy? And she said, okay, we're going to go out. We'll go out tonight. We went out that night and we had a great time. And she liked me a lot. She liked so the person I wanted, she liked me. And then I remember walking home and I felt miserable. And I thought to myself, Justin, why is it time and time again you want something and you seem to get it and then you're just miserable right after? And then I went home and I started drinking wine and I turned on this show called 30 for 30. It's a basketball movie about Chris Herron, and he wasted his NBA career through drugs and alcohol. And as I was miserable watching that, I saw this guy waste his life, his NBA career, And then there was a moment in the movie where he got sober and he became a hero in his community. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, look how great he looks now. But he went back to a 7-Eleven and he said, right here is where I passed out while my wife and my kid were at the airport waiting for me. And I remember looking at the TV and I said, that's pathetic. And then I said, oh, wait, that's you. Justin, that's you. Because a week before that, I missed the airplane because I was drunk. So all of this culmination of people making me feel good and me trying to make myself feel better and validation, it kind of culminated in me trying to get this woman who liked me and then realizing that I was miserable right after it. And that was my road to like really looking at myself.
What fortuitous timing, I guess, that you watched that basketball documentary 30 for 30 as well, right? I mean, what would have happened if you had not have watched that documentary on that night, do you think? Would something else have happened? Do you think that you would have chosen sobriety? Would it have just been delayed?
You know what? I don't think I've ever been asked that, James. That is a great question. I'm going to think about it truthfully now because up until that point, why would I continue doing something that I had 3 DUIs, driving under the influences? I've been incarcerated 6 times, drunk in public, fighting in public. I mean, I had all kind of. I've been in rehab twice, but there was something about that night when I saw Chris Herron, and because I was an athlete, I had a couple scholarships. I played basketball, so I saw something in him, and when he got sober, it inspired me. So I guess James, the answer is that I don't know because the moment the moment I said to the TV, "That's pathetic what he did," then I said, "Oh wait, that's you." I had so much shame go through my body, but then right after that, I had inspiration and hope because I said, "You don't have to make this choice anymore. Like you can make a different choice." So I said right there, I was drunk and it was late at night and I was watching this thing and I said, "You know what? Tomorrow I'm not going to drink. I don't care if I punch a horse in the face. I don't care if I get in a fight. I don't care what I do, but I'm not drinking. I'm not going to drink tomorrow." And, James, I haven't drank since because that one day led into another day. And then I said, well, let me go to AA meetings and let me get a sponsor, 90 and 90. Okay, let's do that. Let's find some new friends, people, places, things. But then really what I had to deal with after about 9 months of sobriety, I started to feel really guilty about, Justin, why did you do all this to yourself? Like, why did you not see you're a smart person? Why did you not see what you've been doing to yourself for you? Why didn't you quit a long time ago? And then I started to realize in therapy, I went every Wednesday and I started to realize through childhood trauma and other things, my mother had me at 16. My father died when I was 4. So my mother was a widow at 20 with 2 kids. So we were very poor. There was neglect, all these different things. So I realized through therapy, it had to come out somewhere. It had to come out somewhere, all the neglect and all these different things. And for me, it came out in alcohol and wanting to be accepted and validated. Once I could, once I could understand that about myself, I was able to forgive myself and love myself a little bit. And when I started to love myself a little bit, I started to love myself a little bit more. And when I started to love myself, I realized I didn't need other people validating me. And that was the road to recovery, not just getting sober, but getting sober in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that on so many levels. I remember getting validation from women. Similar to your story, it seems like if all of my self-worth came from, does the opposite sex find me attractive? And through therapy, I traced that back to what I
Yeah.
observed in my parents and things like that. Uh, and I remember the day that I stopped drinking, which was March 2010. I was in Austin, Texas at that year's annual South by Southwest festival. And I went out to an industry party. I had 2 Bombay Sapphire gin and tonics, woke up the next morning in a hotel 20 minutes outside of Austin. And I looked in the mirror and I just went, enough. Like I looked weathered and tired. I was
Yeah.
overweight. And I went to an IHOP, an International House of Pancakes, next door to this hotel. And I sat there and then I thought, what am I doing in an IHOP? And that was the moment that I said, I'm just going to stop for 30 days. Now, my intent was just 30 days. I never imagined that I would
Mm,
go 14 and a half years as what I am now as we're recording this today. But that was my moment, and it was really driven from a feeling of mediocrity. Like I wouldn't actually
mm,
submit that I was rock bottom. I didn't get DUIs
yeah,
like it sounds like you did. I didn't wake up in a ditch. I didn't have
yeah,
a big dramatic shocking rock bottom moment. Mine was kind of like death by a thousand cuts. It was like 20 years of mediocrity that had all kind
yeah.
of built up into one situation. That was my
Mm.
trigger to make a change. And I felt so good after 30 days. I just kept going and going and going, and here we are, 14 years later.
Well,
It's
well, well,
so
the same thing, James. I got DUIs well before this, but you know what? You might relate to the same thing. I told myself, "You're not an alcoholic. You're just a wild and crazy guy, Justin. You're just crazy. Like you're just more fun than everybody. And the people who are more fun in life, more things happen to them. Like you're the guy people tell stories about." But when I watched that movie, the Chris Heron story, the same thing you just said. I felt so mediocre. For the first time in my life, I was not able to excuse who I really was. I was a guy who had a six-figure salary, yet I couldn't afford my own place. I was sleeping on somebody's couch. I was dating four women a week and wasting all my money trying to get validation. Uh, I didn't have any real friends. So in that moment of looking at Chris Heron, it wasn't that like I wanted to stop drinking as much as I really looked at myself in the mirror and I saw myself for who I really was, which is a very mediocre person who was not achieving anything in life. I knew I had a lot of potential, but it was not manifesting at all because of the lifestyle I was living. So the DUIs for me were like 5 years before. I just told myself I'm just wild and crazy. But in that moment, when I looked in the mirror, I said, "No, this is who you really are. You are somebody who is not achieving what you could do in life because other things are holding you back." And that's when I said, "Well, tomorrow, I don't care what I do, but I'm not drinking." And once again, like you said, I mean, it's led to 11 years. And if you were to tell me then that I'd be here now, not that I wouldn't believe it, I would believe it because I would say, you know what, Justin, if you take all this energy that you put into running the streets and womanizing and drinking and you put it over here, you probably could do amazing things. You probably could build great businesses. You probably could have a happy family. And that's what's happened. Is I kind of took my energy from here and I put it over here. It's kind of like the analogy if you take a plane and it's going this way and it's going one and you change it 1 degree, it's going to end up in a whole different city. So
yes.
it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing with my life. It's kind of like once I started getting healthier, I kind of got addicted to the new life more than the old life. And I think that's my biggest thing is that daily sober, it's one lesson at a time. It's one page a day is all it is. But the whole thing is if you can make your life bigger in sobriety than it was in your addiction, you'll never go back to that. But I every time I relapsed, it's because I wasn't creating a better life in sobriety. I was romanticizing about the drunken days, and I'd go back to that. But the moment I started creating a bigger life, and it became Big Justin, Little Alcohol, then I never went back to alcohol or drugs.
Yeah. A lot of our prospective members tell us on phone calls when they're considering engaging our stop drinking services. And for context, we have a 90-day stop drinking process where we help our members rewire their mindset. And then, we've got some other communities that go on for well past a year. They fear that they will be dull and boring if or when they stop drinking alcohol. And they cannot understand the association between being alcohol free and having fun and having a more pleasurable life. And then I've looked at this, I've spoken to professors at universities and addiction experts around the brain circuitry as to what happens. And I've come to learn that, when we drink alcohol, it fires off our dopamine receptors. And then when we stop drinking alcohol, because the dopamine receptors have been overused, it's it can feel challenging to try to get back to that kind of high or any type of enjoyment from any activity that does not involve alcohol. And
Mm-hmm.
and then over time, as the dopamine receptors repair and we start to get similar levels of let's call it fulfillment in life, or new levels of fulfillment, and those steady levels over many months and years now become so much more pleasurable than any temporary dopamine hits that we would get from drinking alcohol.
Hmm.
Is that your understanding of it,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
can you relate
You
to
know
that?
what? I love that. I love that. I'm gonna. So the other night, I told my wife, I'm like, you know what? I really like how boring my life is. Meaning that I don't have to hide my phone. I don't have to hide any part of my life. I don't have to, because a lot of addiction is like looking over your shoulder, or like hiding your phone, or like you all this mischievous things that you think are exciting. Like my life is wild. I told my life. I told when I tell people that are trying to get sober and they talk about being bored, that is an asset. If your life is boring, that means you got no stress. That means you got no problems. So I want a boring life now. My boring life is like I go outside and I look at my lawn and I play with my kids, and like I said, my wife can pick up my phone. I'm not worried about what she finds. Like all these different things. I really, really embrace a boring life. And maybe that's because over the years the dopamine has rewired to say, okay, there's he's finding more pleasure in long-term things like family and love and emotional connections versus the very ephemeral, I got to get a fix right now, I got to get a hit right now, or I got to try to hook up right now.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with being boring? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think we got to define the word boring, because as you were saying that, I typed into Google, what's the definition of boring? And it says not interesting and tedious. So I would actually submit that boring is not the most effective word, although we can use the word boring with a sly grin on our face, like to
Yeah.
to demonstrate the meaning of what we're saying. Because
Non-dramatic. Just for me, it was just like lack of drama. So I have a
yeah,
lack of drama. I have no drama in my life, and sometimes I tell my wife, I'm like, you know what? I have no drama in my life, and that's such an amazing thing. But I remember back in my life when I would be texting 5 or 6 girls at one time, and I'd be lying about this thing, and I would change this date to do that instead, and I would try to like do this thing, and that drama I felt was exciting. And now,
yeah.
obviously, I have none of that.
Yes. Well, the reason people find that exciting is because it literally fires off dopamine receptors in the brain, like, and people become addicted to it to the point where they feel dead if they don't have drama.
Also, it fires off cortisol and a lot of other bad hormones, and these things kill you just as much as a bad diet does. So when you have a bunch of cortisol and stress and norepinephrine in your blood, it's not good as well. But we think that's exciting and we think that's pleasurable, but really it's just chaotic and wild. I mean, when I was drinking and driving, I got 3 DUIs. I mean, I'm so grateful now I didn't hurt myself or somebody else. But at the time, I'm like, man, I'm driving drunk. Dude,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah,
It's ridiculous.
yeah. I must admit, years later now, I used to leave the Jones Bar on Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood, and I would drive my 1990 Chevy Corsica car from the bar back home around midnight, 12:30. And after having only like a few drinks, and I used to think I'm fine with a few drinks, but maybe it was actually four. And when I grew up in Australia, the legal drinking limit for driving was 0.05, but in California it was 0.08.
Mm.
And because I had 0.08, which is all, towards double of what it is in Australia, I thought, oh, I can have another drink. I tell you, I'm sure I went through a couple of red lights, or I remember going through a couple of red lights because I didn't want to wait,
Yeah.
because I'd had a few drinks in me. And I feel terrible about that now.
Yeah.
Thankfully, nothing happened. I remember pulling into the Carl's Jr. Burger drive-through at 12:30 on the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard and La Cienega, or La Brea, I think it was, and getting burgers and trying to eat the burger and
Yeah.
fries while I'm driving home with one hand on the steering wheel, trying to get back to my place on the corner of DeLong Prairie and Highland. I had to be over 0.08. I had to be.
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate nothing terrible happened.
Well, the reason you didn't get arrested is because I got all my DUIs in California. They pulled me over first.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of like at the time, even when I got the DUIs and I had to do 2 months in jail on the third one, like it got to a point of like, even then I didn't stop. I stopped. I got out. I stopped for like a month, but then I did not fix my brain. My brain was not fixed, so I went right back to it. And the whole point of when I moved to New York, when I got sober, this was deep because for the first time in my life, when I saw that video and that movie and I looked in the mirror, I saw who I really was. And my ego diminished. In one moment, my ego just diminished. And I was like, Justin, this is who you really are. Now, I'm also really big on like Eastern philosophy, Alan Watts, Taoism, all this kind of stuff. So I also, in that moment, I said, you know what, Justin, you might live to be 88, 92, whatever it is. You have a choice to be happy. And I said, you know what? I don't think for me to be happy, if I want to make that choice, that alcohol and drugs can fit into that. So I need to consider if I'm going to live to be that long and I want to be happy, how can I set the rest of my life up for that? And I said, I don't think that you can do this anymore. So part of it was like looking forward in my life to know that I'll have many years ahead, and how can I leave behind what I've done and forgive that and have a new better life where I'm happier and healthier.
You referenced a couple times that you did prison time. What were you doing prison time for? Was it the DUIs?
Third DUI. Yeah, they were all in 1 year. James, I got 3 DUIs in 1 year.
And so what's the sentencing for each one? Or does it only kick in after you've got 2 or 3 in a row?
Well, you know what? I got 2 within 2 weeks. So
and that's enough for you to be sentenced then and to get prison time?
Okay, so when you get 1 DUI, you go to jail. I mean, you go to the court about 30 days later. But I had 2 DUIs by the time I went to court.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I had to. So the point is, and I've talked about this before, there's some privilege in my skin color, and I had some money where I could pay for an attorney, and all I had to do, my attorney said he's going to rehab, he's going to straighten it all out, and the judge was like, okay, that's good enough, okay. And I think a lot of that is because of my skin color, and I had money for an attorney. But then when I got
maybe you should just clarify with our listeners your skin color, Justin.
Oh, my skin color is white, and I say that not to fast forward, but my wife is Nigerian. I have a blended family, but I'm very open about how I believe that I probably got certain privilege because of my white skin color. I had a little bit of money, whereas I was able to pay the attorney, and they were able to help me out. If I was another skin color, I don't think I would have been in that situation. I really got to be honest with that. So, but the third DUI in the same year, I got another DUI. That's when they kind of throw the book at me. They like, this dude did not do what he said he's going to do. So I had to do like a month of jail, and I had to do like 2 months of work furlough. Work furlough was when I got to work during the day. I was an engineer at the time. I got to work during the day, and at night I had to be in jail. So every day I would, and James, you're an athlete. Like, you'll appreciate this. Let me tell you a quick story. I had 30 minutes. This is no joke. I had 30, and I couldn't drive. There was no bus around. They gave me 30 minutes, 6:30 a.m. At 7 a.m., they would be at my job to make sure I was there because I had to be where I said I was going to be. I ran 5 miles every day for 2 months. Now, this is a great story, okay? 6:30 in the morning to 7 o'clock. They might be at my job at 7:05, 7:15 to make sure I'm there. I'm running in the rain. Now, I will backtrack and say that I had a scholarship for track and cross country. I was a good runner. So, but running 5 miles in 30 minutes is a really tough task. Woo, crazy. But I did it. And I did it twice a day. I did it because I had to get home. I had to be back by 7 p.m. So 6:30 to 7, I would run and I would get back. Now, I did 2 months of that. And you can still look this up in 2002. When I got done with my work furlough, I entered the Big Sur Marathon on the coast of Monterey. You know this. Big Sur. I placed 30th out of, I think, 5,000, a sub 3-hour marathon. I didn't even practice.
Wow.
I didn't even practice because when I was in work furlough, all I did was push-ups and run. And so when I got out, I said, I'm gonna sign up for this marathon. And I finished like top 1%.
So drinking
James,
puts you in the top 1% of athletes in the world.
so James, the point here is that I was wired in a certain way to be great at everything. And if I put alcohol and drugs in front of me, I'm going to be great at it. That's when I decided. I said, Justin, you have the potential. If you just put your energy in better places, you can do great things. And that was kind of the early seed of saying, well, why don't you figure out something better to do with your life than chasing women around and drinking?
Last question, just on the work furlough, and then we want to move into what actually happened. What were the or the benefits and the results that happened in your life from being consistently alcohol free? Where did you have to stay overnight? Like, was it in a prison, a minimum? Like, where
Yeah,
was
the
it at? Because I
jail.
know, which jail was it? What were the conditions there? Just for the listener who's like maybe trying to discourage themselves from getting DUIs.
Well, I can tell you two stories. The one story is when I went to jail. When you went to the county jail, that was terrible because you checked in and they gave you your bed over your shoulder. You literally carried your bed, and then you went into a barracks of like 60 people, and there were all these tough people. I went in there and I started shadow boxing to try to. I really did. I went in there in the corner, started shadow boxing because I thought somebody's going to rape me or something like that, and so that was that experience. Work furlough is more for the professional. It is a
Yeah, yeah,
jail.
yeah.
It is a jail, but you're in the same room with about 25 other people, and they all stink, and you eat the same thing, and you got to wear you got to wear your orange clothes when you're there. But you get
Wow.
to leave to go. You get to leave to go to work.
Yeah,
Was it
yeah,
fun? No. Were there rules? Yeah, I mean you had to do what they said, but you could also play ping pong and pool. It was not enjoyable. It gave me a lot of motivation to say, you know, I've done good things in my life. I helped a startup. I was successful. But then at that point, I looked at, I'm like, no, Justin, you're just a guy in jail. Like you are a dude in jail right now. That's where you are.
yeah. So let's talk about all the great things that happened, because I know that you've gone on and your family now are big social media stars. I think you've got 12 million social followers with 2 billion YouTube views.
Yeah.
Maybe before you get to that point, maybe just tell us the story from like year one of being alcohol free to where we are today. What happened?
Well, yeah, you'll love this, and I think the people listening will love this. So when I was a drunk, I was also a womanizer. But when I got sober, after starting going to therapy, I said I don't need to date either. I need to take at least a year off of dating anybody. I need to figure out who I am. So living in New York City, I changed all my people, places, things, and I talked about this in a TED talk. That when I got done with work, I was working in Wall Street and I was living in Washington Heights, which is 5 miles away up Manhattan. And to keep me out of bars and to keep me away from people I didn't need to be around, I walked, once again, physical, something very physical. I walked from Wall Street all the way to Washington Heights, even in the snow, even in the rain. I walked. Why? Because I didn't know if I was strong enough to stay out of bars. If I took the subway home and I got home at 7:30 and I'm sitting on my couch, I didn't know if I would go to the bar if I had that time. So I eliminated that. I said, you're going to walk. And what I did, I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to podcasts like yours, self-improvement, other things. And I started to enjoy it. So I said, no dating, no dating for a year, therapy, sobriety. I started to my dopamine, and I started to rewire myself. And you know about this, people. You can't stop. You can't get sober and not change everything else. And it's not going to take a day. So I said, in 1 year, let's see what happens. Therapy, no dating. So after about a year and a half of no dating, uh, my wife, I was getting out of the subway and I looked across the street and I saw this beautiful woman, and she was getting harassed by some guys chasing her because she physically she's stunning. And I went over to try to save her. I pretended like I knew her. I walked up to her and I said, "Hey, these guys behind you are like, they're, hey baby, why don't you just pretend like you know me? Walk around the corner with me, like, they'll leave you alone." We walked around the corner, we talked, went to a restaurant, and then she became my wife.
Well played, sir. Well played.
So the story there is that I did not date, and I said I'm going to figure out who I am. Now the greater story there is, James, is that after I got to know her and she's beautiful, she told me she just had twins a year ago. So she was a new mom. She had a bad relationship with a guy who treated her bad. He cheated on her, left her when she was pregnant. James, I didn't want to be a husband or a dad. It's been a year and a half. I just kind of want to get laid, right? I'm sober. But you know what? I said, this is the most powerful thing I can tell you. I said, you know what, Justin, your way got you where you are. And now you're sober. Why don't you at least be open to thinking you may not know what you want with your life? You like this woman. Yes. Meet her kids. I met her kids, and within a couple hours, I said, I'm going to be their dad. I said, I'm going to be their dad. And within a year, I was married to her, and I adopted her daughters, which became my daughters. And we've been happily ever after since. And that was 9 years ago. 9 years
Wow.
ago.
In those 2 hours that you spent with the kids, that kind of had you embodying the father role and the husband role and I'm assuming like maybe the provider or protector role. Like, what was it that happened in those 2 hours that made you go, okay, yes?
Empathy. I looked at those little girls and I felt they were so beautiful and they were so innocent. And I remember myself as a young boy being scared and not having anyone and having a dad who passed away and being very scared. I remember being 4 and 5 and thinking, why can a little boy be this scared of life, you know? And I remember looking at these girls and knowing what they'd already gone through and how great of a person my wife was or is at the time, the person I was getting to know. And I just looked at them and I said, you know what? I want to give them what I never received. And I think by my effort in doing that, they will give me way more in return than I ever could possibly imagine if I just take that chance. Because now that I'm sober, if I don't want this, Justin, what are you saying? You don't want a family? Are you saying you want to go back to running the streets? Well, now's your chance to have something completely different. And my heart just opened up and just said, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot, because when I looked at how innocent and beautiful these little girls were, I just said, man, they just deserve a good dad. And I think I'm at the place where I can do that.
Beautiful. And what happened then over the next few years and the subsequent years?
Well, I had a past of 9 years of stand up comic. I worked with Seinfeld and Dana Carvey. I worked with everybody, right? I worked all across the country, so I was a storyteller. I could write jokes. So I got my camera out and we started making little videos, and a couple videos went viral. We were on Good Morning America, the Today Show. We did a lot of big stuff, and people just started following us. They just thought my twins were precious and my wife, and they loved the family, that we had a good story, we're blended, and people just started following us. And then the next thing you know, we started working with brands like Disney and Google and all these big brands, and it started paying good money, and it just kind of took off. So once again, I took the energy that I had in my addiction and I put it into learning how to edit, learning how to be a filmmaker, learning digital marketing, learning social media, learning graphic design. I taught myself everything. And so that's the other thing is, once again, I took my energy from one place, I put it over here, and I was able to accumulate some great skills that were very valuable in building this business. And then, a couple years ago, I meet a guy like Damon John, and now he's my business partner. So it's kind of like been this culmination of a lot of great things have happened, and I've earned it all. And that's not arrogant, that's humble. I've earned it all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. And I know a lot of people who refer to themselves as an alcoholic or an addict will say that they have no control. What's your view on that? Because my view is that we all have control, even if we feel out of control, and that language that we use to describe what's going on with us is so critically important. So coming back to the question, what's your view on those who say that they have no control?
No, what they don't have is discipline. It's as simple as that. It's not a matter of control. It's a lack of discipline. I found all these things that I did, James. If you look at everything that I talked about running to work furlough, walking New York, changing all my people, places, things, that's discipline. And so I knew everything that I wanted was not going to be tomorrow. But I said, if I can just have the discipline to change my habit and rewire things, the things I want might happen. They may not happen. It's like, James, let's talk about this book for 1 second. Daily Sober. A year ago, I wrote that. I wrote 3,000 words a day, every day until I was done. It was hard. And my wife was like, wow, every day he does it, because I knew I wanted to write the book. So it's not a lack of control, it's a lack of discipline. And I feel for me that if I had the discipline to go run around the city and waste all my money and try to get laid, then I should also have the discipline to put forth towards a better life for myself. I deserve that.
Why is it that someone like you was able to harness that discipline, to create that discipline, to execute on that discipline, and somebody else is seemingly unable or chooses not to?
That is a great question. And like, I help people in sobriety, and a lot of times I try to tell people about discipline, and you see that I don't know if they just don't want it for themselves, if they don't have the ability to focus. A lot of times I feel it's the lack of focus, is that so many things go on in their head, they can't focus on the one thing that they want. Whereas for me, when I got sober, I said, I'm not drinking. That's the thing I'm focusing on. And everything else has got to go away. Whereas a lot of these people, it's 17 other things going on, and they can't focus on the one thing they need to be disciplined about. Therefore, they lose control. They lose control.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done a lot of study on how people can harness the impact of a like-minded community of people to keep them focused. So a lot of folks still, in my view, mistakenly believe that they can stop drinking alcohol or drugs or any kind of addiction on their own. Now, it seems like you were able to do it somewhat on your own. But I'm wondering whether you feel like attempting to overcome an addiction like alcohol, for example, it's far more effective in a group of like-minded people with the same goal, or whether you feel like it's just an individual switch that you can just choose and you don't need the accountability of a group.
No, you definitely need a support system. Like I know you mentioned you have some of your programs, which I think I would heavily embrace. I did it on the decision I made was mine, James, but I went to AA. I did smart recovery. I hung out with new people that were sober. I built a support system. Could I have done it on my own? Yes, because I was that determined. Would it have been enjoyable? No. Would it have been harder? Yes. So it's way like I would never encourage anyone to try to do it alone. I would say find whatever works for you, whatever type of support system. Now we have online stuff. You have what you're doing. I have what I'm doing. There are things that people can connect with, but I definitely wouldn't recommend people do it on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. There was the American Training Association put out a study that showed that your chances of success in any endeavor increase by 95% if you do it in a group of like-minded people with the same common goal.
Yeah, that's why I go to CrossFit. I do other things where I get to work out. I mean, I have motivation to go to the gym, but it's way more enjoyable when I see 12 other people who are pushing me along. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. When I go to AA, when I went to AA, I would sometimes I wouldn't want to go, but then I'd go and somebody would pat you on the back. They're glad to see you. Somebody just got a coin. And next thing you know, it's like, man, I'm glad I'm fellowshipping with these other people.
Yeah, got it. Grab your book again for us, Daily Sober. I want you to just flick through it, and then I'm going to tell you stop, and you're going to stop and you're going to read from that page. So just flick through it. Here we go. Flick through it. Flick through. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Stop. Okay, now read from that page. Read what you wrote in your book, The Daily Sober, on that page. Go for it.
September 14th, be careful of environments. Okay? Our environment plays a massive role in shaping our decisions. If you're on a diet but hang out in a candy store, you're probably going to eat some candy. For someone battling addiction, places like bars or clubs act as a consistent temptation. It's not just about willpower, it's about reducing the risk of relapsing by avoiding triggers. And here's a little bit about me. Around 3 weeks sober, I experienced a tempting situation. While having dinner with friends, someone I didn't know joined us and ordered a whiskey, my favorite brand. The aroma of the drink, the appearance, and the entire vibe was enticing. I politely excused myself. I text my friend saying I'm putting my sobriety first. I left. They understood and encouraged me to join them when things would be more comfortable. You me keep reading?
Yes, please.
Okay. In that scenario, a couple things happened. I didn't fall prey to my temptation. I put my sobriety first. And two, my friends were supportive and encouraging of what I wanted to do. There was no peer pressure, which made it easy. When a sober person visits unhealthy environments, they're constantly exposed to what they're trying to avoid. This can reignite cravings and old habits, making staying on the right path harder. Testing your resolve can be exhausting and frankly dangerous. Frequenting these places can also lead to a sense of isolation or disconnection from the sober lifestyle. It might feel like being stuck between two worlds, not fully belonging to either. This can impact mental health and undermine the support system that's crucial for our recovery. Are you strong enough to leave situations that jeopardize your principles? And that's a question. And so that is September 14th. Be careful of environments. The next day is September 15th, and that's a spotlight on Brett Favre, who's
Yeah, the
sober.
former NFL quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah, so James, what I tried to do is I tried to write a book, but it was very hard because I said nobody wants to read a whole book, but maybe they can read one page a day, and maybe that one page can be a nice little nugget that they can say, you know what? And the thing is, James, I do videos, so if nobody wants to buy the book, go to my Instagram and watch them for free every day for free. And sometimes I will read something when I'm about to do a video, and guess who needed it? Me.
Yeah.
I sometimes I read what I wrote, and I'm said I'm glad that I read that today
Yes.
as I'm doing the video. So anyhow, daily sober is 365 daily lessons. Every day is different.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I acknowledge you for writing that book and putting it out into the world, Justin. I salute you, sir. Well played.
Just
And
trying to help a little bit.
yeah, yeah. And where can our listener and viewer find you when you're talking about sober content? And where can they go and have a look at your family doing all of the things that your family are doing now with the 2 billion views and millions of followers?
Yeah, we have like 5 million on Facebook, 5 million on YouTube, blah blah blah. It's a business, but we make family content. It's the Mighty McClures, MIGA. So my last name is McClure, MIGHTY. Mighty McClures is our kind of pseudonym. You can find me on Instagram, Justin McClure. You could also find Daily Sober if you want to connect with the videos.
Well, Justin McClure, thank you so much for sharing your story and your guidance and expertise with us today. We really appreciate it. And I salute your success, your sobriety, and long may it continue, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you're doing.